everyone. Right on. See, that helps already. It's so good being here. I really appreciate you all having me out. I want to talk about data for the greater good. And as I was putting this talk together, I actually changed the title from data for good to data for the best of intentions. And the reason is I want to tell you all about some of the work we're doing in using data science and algorithms for social good, and also talk about some of the places that it is falling flat on its face. Because I imagine some of you are going to want to go out and do this, and so it's important to talk about the less rosy parts as well. So I'm going to kind of blather at you for a little bit, and then hopefully leave enough time for Q&A that we get to all the really fun stuff in discussion. So first off, I think it's always worth just remarking on the age we are in. I mean, there are now more cell phones on the planet than people. Almost everything we do online is digitized and tracked, as some people know better than others. You know, we're instrumenting our bodies, right? We're strapping sensors to ourselves to measure everything from our heartbeats to what tugs at our heartstrings. And we are surrounding our globe with sensors, measuring everything from what goes on in the mountains to the plains to all over. And this is really an incredible time, because we're not just talking data like spreadsheets and server farms here. We are talking about nothing less than a new age of reason. Now, we have more data now pouring off of everything we do, every activity we're digitizing to teach us more about our place in the universe, about each other, and about ourselves than ever before. Think about that. That's incredible. We're all at this forefront of humanity. And so far, we've gotten so good at using all of that data to sell people crap. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, this is my website. I love my Snuggie. I'm glad Amazon's algorithms recommended it. But, you know, 99% is fine. But 99% of what we're doing is in Wall Street and Silicon Valley. It's fine, but it feels like we could be doing something more if this is really the new age that we're in. So I just went out and said, how could we go about using data science for social causes as well? And went to the people I knew best first, data scientists. I consider myself a data scientist. I did computer science and statistics. And so I went to my first hackathon and said, aha, this is it. We don't need to make change at our jobs. We don't need to make change in the government. I'm sitting next to a machine learning expert from Google. I got a scientist from NASA over here. This is how we're going to make change. We got 48 hours to come up with the coolest stuff we can. And it's going to make such a difference. It's going to be so world-changing. It's going to have so much impact. It's going to be so powerful. And the stuff that we built was so unfulfilling. We built an app to help you park your car or find some local deals. And it's fine, but it's more of the same. Because if you give a 25-year-old a problem to solve, they're going to solve their own. And that's usually not low-income housing. It's cheap beer. Again, don't blame it. I use it all the time. But there could be more. So the interesting thing that I think has really happened is with this global digitization, companies that you don't think of as tech companies are becoming tech companies, including little groups like this, a nonprofit called Kalimo Salama. They offer micro-insurance to farmers via cell phone. And this was a huge innovation that they could do it with cell phone technology, because now they could reach farmers in the remote regions of Kenya and Uganda, give them insurance, and help ensure their crops are covered. What this also means they're surrounded by data, right? They've got every single transaction of every agent and every farmer. They've got weather data pouring in, government data coming in. With that data, they can actually build predictive algorithms to understand when a farmer is going to need a claim before they even make it. That's incredible. Think of, with that efficiency, how many more farmers you could help, how much better the world could be just using the same algorithms we're boosting profits with to boost impact. So there's the promise. That's so exciting. So most of these organizations have no one to help them do that. Are you kidding? Those 85 econometricians from Amazon, you think they can afford them? They work on $500 a month. So therein lies the problem, that there are these data scientists out there hacking away on interesting stuff that's not necessarily high impact, and social organizations that could actually take advantage of this on the front lines that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford or even understand how to interface with a data scientist. So that's why we started DataKind. We exist to harness the power of data science in the service of humanity by basically bridging that skills gap. We bring data scientists from Google, Facebook, wherever they're working, to come volunteer with social organizations that have interesting social challenges. And this could take the form of a really structured hackathon over a weekend. That's one of the easy ways to get people in the door, all the way up to our Data Core program, where people will volunteer part-time for 6 to 9 months, working in a team of 4 and actually go deep on solving challenging problems. And it's kind of a great solution, right? Because data scientists get to have social impact. Always feels good. Social organizations get to maximize their impact, and then we get to live in a better world. What could be better than that? So let me show you a few examples of what this looks like. First comes from a group called Crisis Text Line. Now, Crisis Text Line is a service that allows teams to text counselors when they're in need. How many people remember the old suicide or care hotlines you used to call the 9 line? Yeah. Well, they noticed that the calls were falling off precipitously. And they're like, wow, great. So teens aren't in trouble anymore, right? Unfortunately, there's a laugh there, right? Because that's not what was happening, but teens don't call on the phone anymore. They text. So Crisis Text Line is a fantastic innovation that has helped thousands of teens get in touch with counselors for life-saving help, and they've scaled this system out to hundreds of cities. But now they face a problem with something called repeat texters. So some people text, they just don't have a problem. They just want to chat. They're bored. It's easy to text. And so Crisis Text Line would wait for about 16 texts, after which someone had not allowed anything urgent to happen, to say, look, this person's just hanging out. And even though it's a small percentage of people, maybe 8%, it takes up 40% of their counselor time. That's a huge amount that can be used to save kids' lives. So we teamed them up with some data scientists from Pivotal. This is Bob from Crisis Text Line team and Noelle at Pivotal. And she analyzed the behavior of when, what texters that were repeat texters said, how often they texted back, what the records were. She was able to build a pretty good predictive model that after just 6 texts, was able to get about 80% accuracy. So they put this into effect in their systems, and now all of a sudden they're able to save, they estimate, thousands more teen lives, up to 10,000 more per year, just with a little bit of code switch. So that's amazing. And as a nice cherry on top, they're getting better customer reviews because the repeat texters are like, thank you. I didn't want to talk to a counselor. I just wanted the website info or just to chat to someone else. So it's actually a win-win. So that's a great case where these new kind of tech-based nonprofits can take advantage of this. But it also extends to groups like government agencies. So the New York City Parks Department came to us and they said, listen, we have data about every single tree in New York's urban forest. Beautiful, poetic name for New York's trees. I love that. I mean that sincerely. I think that's really gorgeous. They said, look, we know everything about them. We know when they were planted. We know when we've managed them. We don't really know if a lot of our programs are working. There's one thing we do is we go prune tree limbs that look dangerous. Some are hanging. We don't want them to fall on a grandma or a car. And so we just cut them down. But we have no idea if that actually reduces the amount of emergencies. So we teamed them up with Brian D'Alessandro. He's a data scientist at an ad company who spends his whole day building causal models to figure out if he shows you this ad, are you more or less likely to actually buy the product, which is the same model that you can just plug into if you prune this tree limb, are you more or less likely to have fewer emergencies. It actually worked out pretty well. And so his team not only built some cool visualizations, because I have to put something up on a slide, but they also found that there were 22% fewer tree emergencies on the places where they were pruning. It was statistically significant. And that was a number they'd never calculated before. The mayor went crazy, and now all these cities are writing to them saying, oh, wow, we have just been doing this in the dark. Can we do this too? How do we get that code? We've got the same data. So that's another great case where even governments, I think, aren't thinking this way about their data. And lastly, I want to tell you about a little group called Give Directly. Give Directly are kind of the darlings of the microfinance craze right now because they give cash directly to the poorest. You can make a $100 donation to someone in Kenya and just say, go for it. I don't care what you use it for. So their service is really popular, but they want to extend it to the poorest villages in Kenya and Uganda. And measuring the income levels of a small village in Africa is difficult to do. So they came up with a pretty ingenious proxy. If you look at the roof types of these structures, you can actually tell income level. So someone who has a thatched roof is a lot lower income than someone who has an iron roof. And for perspective, this is actually like the wealthiest person in that town. That's like a mansion. It's true. So they said, well, that's great, but it takes us a long time to go out and actually collect that data by hand. So a couple data scientists said, well, you can probably see the same thing in satellite imagery. Look on Google Maps. It's a little dark with these lights, but there's some brown squares in the center there. There's a silver roof on the right there. That is an iron roof. And so they were able to write some algorithms that just pulled out the structures. And if you don't read like predator vision, basically down here, the algorithm's pulling out the locations of all the centers of these buildings. And that's what you want because then you can build this map of roofiness. As a statistician, I won't say it's poverty, but I will say as a good proxy. Now, there's interesting, I should say before you go off crowing about Give Directly, there were some other interesting implementation challenges we can talk about. So this was not ultimately used by Give Directly. But I think what is important is that these are the kinds of ways that we can use these new technologies, things like satellite imagery to count houses, to build a map like this in just 2 hours. At the click of a button, that's incredible when you think that way. And I want to actually show you a case that doesn't come from DataKind, but I think is so interesting and indicative of this world we're in. How many people know this project? 43,123 pools I have not visited and never will. Oh, good. I just love showing this project off. So bear with me for 1 sec. There's an artist flying into Los Angeles. And he looks out his window and he's like, oh my God, Los Angeles has so many swimming pools. It's ridiculous. How many swimming pools are there in Los Angeles? Like normally you just wonder, right? Or you'd like go win a bar bet or something. But he was like, I can figure this out. So he did the same thing as that last project and built a swimming pool classifier, mined Google Maps over the Los Angeles territory, and found 43,123 pools. Pretty cool. But he was like, that's not enough. I don't want to just know. I want to experience the pools. I want to feel LA's pools. And so he was also able to scrape the Street View API and actually create a virtual tour of all of Los Angeles' pools. I guarantee I will not show all of them. But I want to show you an example. Here, starting at Griffith Observatory. We're going down to 3226 Waverly Drive. It's a beautiful sunny day in Los Angeles. And here we go. Oh, there it is, pool. There's the first pool. Cool. Oh, and it's 3 by 9.3 meters. It's good to know if you're planning a pool party or something. And then we're off to the next pool. That's right. Let's go down to Abner Street. Check that out. Oh, there it is, one of those like creepy apartment pools. So I've got something dead in it. Awesome. Cool. So this, I think, is a beautiful experiment of someone who took an idea, a simple question, how many pools are there in LA? And with the same computing that I'm throwing this presentation off of, was able to go and answer it and give you this kind of interesting experience. There's actually also a coffee table book of just the close-ups of all the pools. It's beautiful. But I bring this up because there's actually, like this to me emphasizes this age that we're in, that we can sort of do these things now very easily. But there's actually a social good component to this too. And so I'll throw it out to you all. If you had a database of all of the swimming pools in Los Angeles, what social good application could you apply that to? Skating? Skating? Say more about that.
The ones that are empty that may not have people there, you can go skate.
OK, so I should define social good, I guess. No. Because let's be fair, an after-school program to get kids moving around. There you go, empty pools. I like that.
I would say preventing drowning deaths.
Preventing drowning deaths, sure. Maybe you want to just.
Maybe certain shaped pools will prone kids drown there more often.
There you go. Yeah, it'd be a real bummer to be the pool salesman who had to release those findings. Who this is our top end of the model. It will likely kill your children, but that's good. You're right. Yeah.
What about pool tax?
Pool tax. Oh, OK. All right. Yeah. Bernie fans in the house. I like it. That's a great call. We can have pool tax. Yeah, you back there. Water to fight fire. Sure, that's a great one. Maybe the fire hydrant's out. We're in a drought. Maybe just plug into someone's pool. Just, hopefully not while we're having a party. Or someone's skating. I apologize. I see other ideas in the crowd, so don't just shout them out. Do them. I think we've got some good startup ideas here. So those are really great. And I think this just goes to show how powerful this data can be. Look at all those ideas you just came up with. The one that actually this ended up getting used for doesn't happen so much in this country, but it's actually malaria prevention. Yeah, it turns out that stagnant pools are a great breeding ground for mosquitoes, and that if you can just identify where they are from satellite imagery, you can go and drain them and drastically reduce malaria rates. Super cool, right? So I bring up all these cases. This one, again, wasn't a DataKind one, but I bring this up to sort of say the age that we're in is one in which this novel use of really ubiquitous and kind of untapped digital info to provide predictions, to provide sort of insights into what social good is happening are going to be everywhere. And that's super exciting. And we could actually probably stop the talk there and just be like, yeah, that was really awesome, a bunch of cool data science projects for good. Let's get out of here. But I want to sort of kind of bring the room back down a little bit because I am in an academic institution. So I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to actually do this, and especially as I imagine a lot of you all are going to go out into this field and hopefully be doing data science for social good. So to set a little context, I should just brag for a second. The DataKind, over the past couple of years, we've done over 100 projects. We have 12,000 volunteers. Man, if we could actually use them all, I'm pretty sure that's the biggest data science consultancy in the world. And 6 international chapters. These are our wonderful volunteer chapter leaders. So I'd say this is a shameless plug, which I will repeat at the end. That if you're interested in getting involved with us, just hop over to datakind.org. We have a chapter here in San Francisco. It's pretty exciting. But look, it's not just us. Other people have figured this out. I mean, if you look across San Francisco, Data Guild, Bayes Impact, they're providing data science fellowships to do this good. So great, they're donating data science capacity. That's awesome. Then there's also social good hackathons. Hey, I see these all the time. There's the National Data Science Bowl by Booz Allen Hamilton. You can hack on social change. You absolutely should. That's really exciting. That's not just that. Corporations, too, are getting in on the mix. You'll see, not eBay specifically, but some groups are actually giving data scientists out to work on social problems. They're trying to make this part of corporate social responsibility. So if you look around, it's like a pretty exciting time. It's almost like defining a pro bono part of the data science profession. So the change is just going to come rolling in, except that everyone is kind of missing the mark in a lot of really fundamental ways. And the problem that we found, even with DataKind included in this set, is that it's not so much that the lack of data scientists is the problem that want to volunteer. The problem is we're not actually thinking about problems in the right frame. I'll give you an example of what I mean. In Africa, hernias are a huge problem. 80,000 people die per year from untreated hernias. This is when your intestines break through a weakness in your abdominal lining. It busts out, and if you don't have treatment, you can die from this. And one of the treatments is fairly costly. It actually involves a really kind of fancy mesh that you wrap around your belly to kind of keep everything in while it heals. And so people are thinking, yeah, this is a tragedy that this is happening, but it's expensive to fix. So one person realized, oh, wait a second. These cheap mosquito netting that aid industry just dumps all over Africa to prevent people from malaria are everywhere, and they're just as good. So you can actually just wrap yourself in a mosquito net, and boom, you've solved the problem at 1/1000th of the cost. That's pretty good, right? Like, that's cool. I mean, you know, like hacked hernias. That's awesome. You know, it's like a cheap tech innovation, and everything went great. The problem is, I would say almost no social challenges actually fit this model. And the reason is there's so much more than just the one little application of the tech solution that really scales out. And in fact, I'm really inspired by this guy, Horst Vertel, who actually wrote about a class of problems some of you may have heard about called wicked problems. There's actually a classification of problems, which he defined as problems that are difficult or impossible to solve because of incomplete, contradictory, and changing requirements that are often difficult to recognize. So when you think about saying, oh, I want to give a cheaper ride share to people, well, your metric of success is whether people are buying it and they're making enough profits. Pretty simple system. I mean, it's not simple, but it's straightforward. When you say I want to reduce poverty or reduce hernias even, what you start to find is, well, OK, now we're reducing hernias, but we're using a technique that now puts these people out of jobs, and that's part of social good, too, because they actually used to work on the farms, and now they can't make enough money. It becomes a whole complicated process that actually requires a lot of messy work unsorting all these wires to make happen. Now, the good news is this isn't the first place people have faced wicked problems. Wicked problems have been around for a long time. And so we've actually been thinking a lot in our work at DataKind about ways to apply data science to these wicked problems. So to get to all those exciting examples, we found basically 5 principles for applying data science to social good. And I want to just talk about a few today. We'll see if we get through them all, but I kind of want to hear from you all. So let me try to hit the most important ones that we think are really interesting. So the first is that, for those who can't see, finding problems can be harder than finding solutions. This is kind of a more wordy version of start with the question, not the data. Basically, the other thing you have to remember is that a lot of people that you're going to be interfacing with don't even know the word machine learning. And when they hear AI, I think of Terminator. I mean, it's very much the same in the for-profit sector. But I'll give you an example. We talked to the Red Cross of Chicago, and they said, hey, we've got all this data about all the fires in Chicago in a database. We've got a cool data science problem for you. I said, oh, great, what is this? I said, well, it's in Access 97, and we want to upgrade to Access 2000. Yeah. You up for the task? And I'm like, yeah, OK. We could do that. We definitely could do that. But what did you do? Like, what are your problems? What do you use this data for? And they're like, well, we got this problem with preventable fires. People will basically put space heaters under their wool blankets in the winter when the landlords don't turn on their heat or it's just too cold. And they cause fires that kill people. The whole building goes up. And so we asked them, well, how do you stop that? Well, we go out, we just put brochures around. We just kind of spray and pray. We're just like, please don't do that. So data scientists said, well, OK, I understand that. But that data you have, the historical fire data, we might be able to combine that with open government data we know about that has landlord violations, demographics of buildings. We could probably build a predictive model to tell you where those fires are likely to happen. You could just go there. It's a mind-blowing moment, right? Like, oh, my God, you could do that. Well, wait, if you could do that, then, oh, we've got this other data set. We've got this other problem. And so I think this is a pretty classic challenge with anyone doing consulting, is that you have to sort of work pretty hard to get into the mindset of the person that you're with, understand their true challenges, and recognize that they're going to come to you with a problem. And it's almost never the right problem. So just be prepared. That's a lot of fun. I think another thing that I want to point out is that the phrase data and statistics are hugely overloaded between this space and the social impact space. And I'll give you an example. I went to the No Ceilings report release. It was so cool. No Ceilings. It was supposed to be the biggest gender data release ever. Hillary Clinton was on stage, Melinda Gates. They were talking about how they collected over 30 years of data across 100 countries. And people are going to be able to study the gender gap better than ever before. And Hillary Clinton got on stage and she goes, and you can download all of the data from GitHub. Hillary Clinton knows what GitHub is? That's all. That was worth the price of admission. Eagerly, like a hungry data, and I ran home like, oh my God, this is going to be so cool. We could use this for so many women and girls projects. And I clicked the button. I'm like, I must have done something wrong. 6 megs. That doesn't. My heart sunk. I knew what I was going to see. That's right. I saw America, 1997, 80%. That's it. If you're not, basically country, year, stat. That's from a giant, hulking, calcified aggregate numbers that you can't do anything with. And so this is, unfortunately, when you say data in the social sector, we have many people, I almost wish no one knew what data was at all. They were just bewildered by data science and big data or whatever that means. But no, instead they're like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. It's one number per year, or it's my reporting data for my funders. And statistics are percentages, not probability in statistics, not statistical models, not forecasting. So I would say a good chunk, if 90% of data science is cleaning up the data, to say maybe 90% of data science for social good work is just explaining what it is we're doing and what data and statistics means. So I think anyone who understands this, please, it's incumbent on us to get that out there. Yes, help people help us. Which brings us, of course, to communication being so much more important than technology. This is just obvious in anyone, I think, doing tech work for non-techies. But I remember watching a presentation from a volunteer group. And we talked before, and they said, oh my God, everything's going great with the project. We talked to the NGO they were working with. They're like, this is so great. They get to the final presentation. They invited all the decision makers in. They said, can't wait to show you what everyone has done. And the volunteer got up, and they said, you can tell by the R squared that this is happening. And we have a p-value of 0.04. And everyone's face fell off, and they died. And no one understood what was happening. And I think there was a point earlier about how the parameters and coefficients would have been enough. But you can't show that to a decision maker. And so just making sure along the way that you are explaining this to your grandma is, and I don't mean that in a bad way. My grandma's awesome. But she's not a data scientist. So knowing how to do that, I think, is super important. I'm going to skip through this one because diverse viewpoints, blah, blah, blah. But just kidding. It's really critical. But I'm running out of time, and I like this one better. There's a phrase I really like in the Civic tech movement called design with, not for. And this is really critical because to me what this says is get the people you're designing, you're going to build the solution to in the process right away. Because if you don't, you're going to build something really shiny that no one ever uses. Or worse, you're going to build something really harmful. And a case that I thought of was a project we did with Amnesty International. Amnesty International came and said, we have a program called Urgent Actions, where we get notification someone's been jailed in a foreign country, and we go out, we send campaigns to free them. But as always, common theme, we have limited resources. We don't know which ones we should really be putting our biggest effort into. So could you build a predictive model to rank these? Which ones should we go after first? And the technology was actually really easy. They'd done a good job of digitizing this data and identifying the ones they considered at different levels of urgency. So we built a logistic regression that was really accurate, really quickly. So then we had to ask ourselves, what if we're wrong? Right? Like, what if we missed something? And this is going to go in the field, and people are going to be affected. Their lives are going to be affected. And what if it was great now, but the data changes? What if Amnesty International doesn't know how to use it? Should they know how to use it? We don't know. So there's these huge, huge, thorny ethical questions about pairing up some volunteers from the US, from a tech company, with social organizations on the front lines of really dramatic, life-changing work, and then giving them an algorithm that, depending on the methodology you've used, maybe no one can explain how it works. So that's a real challenge that the best we have come up with mitigating around is constant conversation. We actually, as DataKind, it may be tempting to think of us as data scientists for nonprofits, but we're actually data science for social change. And what that means to us is pulling together a diverse set of actors that can all weigh in on what the hell we're building. So we go around and just hunt down problem statements, data sets. We, of course, bring in the data scientists, volunteer. That's a big piece of it. But also bring in subject matter experts. So if we're going to build that human rights predictor, who else is doing human rights? Who has ever been jailed and could tell you what this algorithm, what the implications are? Governments. Who else can weigh in on what we're doing? Because it's more than just finishing the project and batting ourselves on the back that we got a high classification rate. And it's all about how it got used and what actually happened because of that. So that's what I would say. This was for those who felt gypped for missing diverse viewpoints. This is a part of that. Don't worry, diversity. But yeah, so I think that design process is super critical. And honestly, it's an open conversation. So if you like having this ethical conversation, come to us at DataKind. We have it all the time, and it's one that is not going to go away anytime soon. So there we have it. There are exciting things that we can do with data science, but there are some design principles when it comes to social impact that are important. And I want to talk about just one, one thing that's like worth noting is if these don't sound particularly data science-y, like they're not, right? I'm sure someone here has been in design school. They're pretty much design principles. And so really maybe the takeaway is go to IDEO.com and pull out their human-centered design toolkit. If people don't know what gibberish I just said, basically they think about how to design solutions, in particular thinking about stating the problem, working with the right actors, and making sure everybody is talking together. And I think what we're missing often in the data science field is that aspect, especially when it comes to things that are going to affect people's lives. Because it can be so tempting to just get a sweet data set and start hacking and see what you can find. But if you don't have everyone else around the table, you're just going to build something kind of cool for your blog. So one example of this I want to talk about really quickly is that at DataKind, we started a group called DataKind Labs. And DataKind Labs is actually full-time data scientists that work on these social challenges, not just volunteer projects. P.S. We are hiring. So if you would like to come do social change with us in New York or San Francisco, please check out datakind.org/careers. But before you go hopping over, I should tell you what it is, which is a lab project where we're actually trying to tackle the sector-wide issue. So not just say, hey, GiveDirectly has a problem, what's their issue, but what is microfinance's problem? And one of our first projects is around the Vision Zero initiative, which is an attempt by US cities to bring pedestrian deaths to zero. It's actually a really ambitious claim. This, no pedestrian deaths are enough. Sorry, any are too many. They're not in the room, are they? Whatever, we're going to have driverless cars soon. It'll be fun. But no, one is too many, is probably what they would say. So they want to bring it down to zero. Now, here's the challenge. How do you bring pedestrian deaths down to zero? All of a sudden, you get policymakers trying to make decisions. Bill de Blasio in New York just said, we're reducing the speed limit from 35 to 25. I don't know how he made that call or where. He maybe had good data, maybe didn't, but that was one way. Other ways are nonprofits that are getting out there and telling people about transportation alternatives, like how to be safe, look out for cyclist safety. So there's all these competing decision makers involved. There's competing data sets. Everyone just has their own data set. Department of Transportation has their data set. NYPD has their data set. So we actually brought data scientists in to convene this group, understand where the different data sets lived, and where the different stakeholders had their incentives. Now, it's only a couple of months into the project, so we don't have the answers yet. But one thing I found is cool is that being a nonprofit allows you to get data that a lot of people don't get, which is awesome. So this is just one of the data sets that I can show, which is the breadcrumb trail for taxi data. And if you are on NewYorkCity.gov, you can get the start and stop points of taxis. But there's a sort of open-ish data set that if you actually work with the city, you can get specific point locations. So one of the very first things we're trying to do in an attempt to answer the question, what interventions will be valuable in certain areas, or can we predict what fatalities will look like in certain areas, is just to understand the complicated web of traffic. So we're combining this breadcrumb data with data from cycles. So the city bikes in New York come in and out. You measure those. Turnstile data. So we're actually going to try to build some models to estimate how many people are flowing out into the streets, out of subway stops, and a number of other really exciting things. But the thing that's most exciting about this to me is that it is the first time that these groups are bringing these data sets together. And more than that, actually talking with each other about solving the problem. There's also kind of a meta thing I geek out on, which is that lots of cities want to do that. And then, of course, they have different types of data sets between them. They measure it different ways. So we're also trying to learn where the similarities and differences are. Anyway, that one is big ranging. But really, to me, it gets down to the aspects of this design process that we're talking about. We're doing some other ones, just if you're curious, on resilience across sub-Saharan Africa, which is going to be super cool. A lot of weather prediction and satellite imagery stuff on that. And we're talking about one about getting better financial services to people in cities. So all that said, I've been talking a lot, and I want to hear what you all have to say. So I will close simply with an image that I like, which is that no matter what you think of this whole age that we're in, whether you're thinking spreadsheets or where you're going to get a job, working to do data science, I think this guy had it best, this dude, Joel de Rosnay, in 1979. He wrote this book called The Macroscope. He's like, since time immemorial, humans have been developing technologies to help them see the unseen. So back in the day, we built a telescope. We could see the infinitely great. We could see the cosmos, the planets, the stars, and we learned more about our place in the universe than ever before. Well, then, of course, we invented the microscope, and we could see the infinitely small. We could see microbes and organisms, and we made huge leaps in medicine. It's incredible. But what we need now, what we're kind of missing is like a macroscope, like something that lets us see the infinitely complex, the patterns of society and nature that you can't see just by flinging a window open. You can't see 9 billion credit card transactions. You can't see migratory patterns across oceans. It's hard to see, and how do we get that macroscope? And that, to me, is really what I think this data age is all about, is that we've been given that macroscope. We're digitizing everything we do on this planet. And now with these tools, we have the ability to learn from them, to predict, to take our species to a whole nother level. So that is the message I want to leave you all with. There are so many opportunities in what we are doing here that go beyond just really cool algorithms. To me, this is a moment in history and a moment that you're all a part of. So whether you end up working in social good or not, I hope that you are contributing your skills, data science or not, to this wonderful collective of people doing things in this new age. So thank you very much.
Terrific. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We've got time for 10 minutes worth of questions before we break. Who wants to kick us off? Right at the back there. We've got some microphones in the room. Just wait for the microphone there, so thank you.
Well, how do you get financial support for user organization? I'm kind of interested about possible business model, although I know you are a nonprofit, but yeah.
Great question. The question is about how do we have financial support?
Yeah.
There's a cup outside. If you liked the talk, please be kind. No, it's a very, very good question. So we've been very fortunate that as a nonprofit, we're largely foundation funded. And this may be a flawed phrase, but there's some foundations that want to pay for the weapon. In other words, they believe the data science should be used for good somehow. And those that want to pay for the war, that are like, I really want to see algorithms for better public health. And so what's really nice is that in a way, they've actually been able to fund DataKind to say, look, get up the resources to leverage this network so that we can do some good here that we couldn't otherwise do. The other thing that's been really exciting is corporations have actually been really excited. We see corporations that want to give back all the time, and so we'll allow them to actually sponsor projects because, of course, we're giving the projects pro bono, and we're just trying to pay for the cost of getting them going ourselves. So IBM recently sponsored a project we did with a group called Microcred on microfinance, and so they get their name on it, they get to publish it, and so that keeps us running as well. So I could go into more depths about what we're thinking over the next 3, 5, 10 years for sustainability, but I think largely this is going to be seen as a service that people want to actually be supporting because it serves foundation needs and corporations want to put their names on. If other people have ideas, I'm open. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you had ideas about what people might do with 1 billion transactions, credit card transactions. Is that right? So
sure.
I work for Visa.
Oh.
So what would be your ideas?
You want to talk later? Let's chat.
Okay.
I'll actually, I will say, I mean, it's just too, oh man. I feel like that's a fun game, though. What would you do with this Dataset game? I'll tell you about one that I actually saw from someone who worked at a financial transaction organization. That they were, one of the big problems when a disaster strikes is people don't know which businesses are open again. And so if you're in town, you're like, I don't know, is my supermarket open? And so people have a hard time getting resources. But this organization can see the second a credit card transaction goes through that they're open again. And they can actually push that back out to the community to say, hey, these are the places that are still operating. So that's a really low-hanging piece of fruit. I've also heard of people who are actually able to track migratory patterns of refugees, not because of visas. Well, maybe they do. I don't know. But I know there are other types of mobile money, if I'm not mistaken, that you can see. So I think that's just scratching the tip of the surface. So yeah, let's chat. That'd be great. Any other questions? Yeah, in the middle there. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, I'll let you direct. Sorry.
Okay, if the microphone's just there, we'll take one right here, and then we'll come to the middle.
So I saw a whole diverse range of projects which you take on. And you did, I guess, at one point stress on subject matter experts. So do you bound yourselves, or anyone approaches you with any data problem and you take it on? Or is there?
It's a really good question. We do not. We don't. So largely, so okay, there's two answers to this. One is that we really are setting out to reduce human suffering. That's sort of our top line. And so what that means is we kind of try to attack the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we prioritize food, water. That's for those theory of what kinds of needs people needed to become self-actualized. And it starts with the basics, food, water, shelter, stuff like that. So we'll prioritize those. But there's also a huge vetting process that organizations go through. Because for us to be successful, this is really starting to get a little wonky, but we want to be able to show that we've had an impact at the end of the day. So to show that we've had, even if we can't say, hey, we've reduced poverty, that's a lot to hope for in one project, we can say, if this group is reducing poverty and we've made them 10 times better, then presumably their operational efficiency translates into better impact. Big asterisk. But what that means is that we then look for organizations that we think are most likely to actually be able to adopt what we can give. And so that means that they have decision makers who are bought into this. Sometimes we get just the IT person who's like, we can show them. And I'm like, it doesn't always work. So having decision makers bought in, and also making sure they have a really clear theory of change, which if you don't speak nonprofit is kind of your business plan. Basically says if I give peanut butter and jelly sandwiches away for free to the homeless, then they will eat more, and then they'll be able to go look for jobs, and then they'll improve economic prosperity. If they can't spell that out for us, then we'll have no way of knowing if what we've helped them with is actually translating to change either. So there actually are some pretty stringent requirements. We are going deeper on issue areas, but at this point we've stayed fairly agnostic because it's been kind of fun watching this chapter network that's doing hundreds of projects a year bubble up the bright spots. So yeah, that's kind of a multi-pronged answer, and I'm happy to talk more about it later.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Can we get a microphone into the middle here, please?
I can show.
Oh, that's great.
No.
I'll repeat it.
People behind won't be able to hear you, so.
Hi, I actually just signed up for the Singapore chapter of DataKind.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Look at that. Yeah, clap for that. Thank you. So glad to have you along. That's awesome.
Thank you. So I had a question as to, it's probably related to any non-profit, but how do you keep a tab on quality control? If you're actually serving the needs of people who are not able to pay you for your service, but they still need something that's good quality.
Yes, great call. So you're raising an even bigger question about the sort of attitude, I think, around pro bono services. There's a sense that pro bono means cheap or low quality, or worse, that because it's free, actually doesn't require any effort on the part of the other person. And so we come in very clearly, and we actually set off from the top. Number one, with our volunteers, we make it very clear. They go through a training process, say, look, this is a professional engagement. You work at McKinsey, you're going to do the same thing here. The other thing that we often do is with the social organizations, we let them know up front, this is free, meaning you don't have to pay dollars, but it's going to take 6 months. These are the various points we're going to need you. We're going to need this from you. It's going to take your time, and that's actually sometimes more precious. So make sure that you're willing to commit to that, because once they sort of go through this conversation, they're like, oh, okay, I'm getting bought in. I get it. And then we actually have, even though it's volunteers, we don't just kick them out the door to tell us how it goes. We have a staff that actually basically monitors. We have project management systems that see where people are, but are also on regular check-ins with both the volunteers and the social organizations. So that's how we maintain quality control, at least at this stage. Of course, that is a challenging thing to scale, right? Because that's sort of a human bottleneck. So we also have a train the trainers kind of program where we're training up our chapter leaders to do the same thing and cascading out. But always a question, and it's something that we actually talk about a lot because you've got to deliver good quality work. Yeah, great question.
Let's take a question from the balcony there, and I can get a.
Oh, how dramatic.
So next.
Question from the cheap seats. This is because you didn't share the diversity slide. I wanted to know, data means many things to many people. And do you ever run into a situation where a volunteer essentially undoes the business that they're working for in their real job by doing a social service? Like for example, somebody working for a bank might do something for a housing crisis, and those two things are actually diametrically opposed. And did you ever run into that, and how do you resolve that?
Wow, interesting question. We haven't run into it that I know of. I'm trying to remember now. We did have someone who had to check with their company. Oh boy, I'm forgetting what it was, but it was similar to like insurance company helping healthcare or something like that, sadly. But we haven't run into that, and frankly, most of our volunteers don't come through like company mandated programs. They're just showing up. So hush, hush, don't tell. We're subverting the norm through that. But no, I don't think we've run into that yet. So good thing to consider. Think about it. Yeah. Any last things? Back there? Yep.
Yeah. My question was, what do you guys consider when opening out into a new city? And do you have any plans opening into Los Angeles anytime soon?
Someone paid you. OK, so that's a great question. OK, so basically, let me step back. Why do you even have chapters? To the quality control point, why would you just throw this out to volunteers? That's ridiculous. However, we know that for this to spread, it can't be that we're just some like consultancy, because we're going to face a lot of the same problems that just a full-time staff consultancy does. It's hard to scale. And the thing is, there are so many people who want to do this, and so many people who need those services. All that's kind of missing is that secret sauce in the middle, that training, like the guidebook, the kit, the toolkit for doing it. So chapters are very much our volunteer experiment scaling this out to say, look, you're kind of part of the mothership. You're doing this in your spare time too. Here's how to do it. You're connected to our network. We'll leverage all the hard stuff so that you can do the easy stuff. So that's our chapter network. And what we look for then are people who are really excited about pursuing the mission. And what that means is that they're not necessarily just excited to do projects. We get a lot of people who are like, I want to be on a project. It's not quite a chapter leader move. We also look for people who can pull together teams in their community. So we have people apply as teams, just as sort of a statement to whether they have community connections and whether they're like able to communicate, do all the people stuff. And the other thing is, if they have sort of an opportunity between the NGO and data science communities, we do unfortunately have people apply from areas where they're just sort of the very, very nascent data science community or very conflict-ridden NGO sector that we're just not at a stage to be able to take. So those are considerations that go into it. And of course, our capacity to manage and care for them. So that's why we launched our last chapters about 18 months ago. We haven't done another round yet. But we've had a lot of interest from Los Angeles, I'll say. And I went to UCLA, and so there might be some bias there. I can't say anything officially, but please write to community@datakind.org if you're interested.
Time for maybe a couple more, so we'll take one here.
Wait. I thought beer starts at 6. You all should stop asking questions.
No, we're keeping going right to the end.
OK.
How do you promote best practice sharing within your community?
Oh, great question. Well, really, basically, we have a Slack channel. That sounds goofy, but works wonderfully. And then we will have quarterly calls with people where the chapter leaders set the agenda. So, hey, we just threw this new kind of event, and we had a lot of problems vetting the organizations. Let's talk about it. We also do project review panels, which is great because a bunch of, I should mention our chapters are in the UK, Dublin, Bangalore, Singapore, DC, San Francisco, and then we're in New York. And so people will share really different stories about how stuff works. And we'll do project panels where people say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this project for the Bangalore police to predict purse snatching locations. Here's the parameters. What does everybody think? And people will weigh in and say, oh, did you ask this? Have you thought about that? Well, we use this practice. And then it's also a chance for me to remind people about any of the best practices as well. So it's a pretty great little learning network. And we're talking about extending it, opening it to the public. It's just a matter of, honestly, capacity at this point to do that. We're small. We're about 11 people. So this is a bigger task than we're all suited for right now.
Yes, sir. I think this is the last question. I apologize for anyone who didn't get questions from you today.
I'll be out there if there's any burning questions. We can chat.
Similar to that question, which is, will you consider sharing the data set among different projects and also among other data-driven NGOs?
Ooh, that is a really sensitive question. We try to incept people into doing that a little more. But social organizations, social companies are actually very protective of data. Not so much because of a competitive advantage, but because it's their constituents' data. So it feels very private. They're very nervous that something could happen. There is also a sense that a lot of social organizations, to get data, usually have to pay or raise a lot of money to commission someone to go out and do a survey. So there's kind of this feeling like, I paid $50,000 for that stupid thing for some researchers to go out and do. I'm just going to give that away to everyone else, which is unfortunate because, right, you think everyone should sort of be egoless in this pursuit. But hey, we've got to pay the bills. So that's a challenge. That said, we've been trying to show case studies where nonprofits are able to bring their data sets together to do more together than they could before. And we have had that happen with a couple. This group, really quickly, a group called GuideStar has data about all the financial data on nonprofits all across the country. Was trying to predict which ones were going to go into default. We're having trouble getting a signal from just the financial data, but a group called Great Nonprofits is like the Yelp of nonprofits in the US. Had a lot of review data, and when you combined a sort of rudimentary sentiment analysis of people saying, hey, this homeless shelter sucks, with the financials, you actually got a much stronger signal, and actually helped both of them. So that was a pretty cool little merger, and so we're always trying to make that happen, but I'm not sure the field is there for us to push it always. Great question. With that, I want to thank you all so much again. Find us on datakind.org, and hope to see you all out there.
All right.
Thanks.